She was full of energy, deeply cherished by her family, respected by her community, and known for the light she brought into every room. To those around her, Chhaterica Danielle Smith appeared to be thriving. Her laughter lingered in the hearts of friends. Her warmth embraced everyone who crossed her path. But on March 30th, 2025, that light was extinguished in the most devastating way. Authorities arrived at a quiet home in Alexandria, Louisiana, answering a domestic disturbance call. What they found would leave even seasoned officers shaken. Inside, the lifeless body of a 38-year-old woman, a gunshot wound, silence, and nearby another body, a second death, a husband, a gun. In minutes, what was once a home became a crime scene. In seconds, a life was reduced to a headline. There had been no cries for help that reached the public. No warning loud enough to be heard by those who might have intervened. But questions echo louder than answers. How did this happen? What signs were missed? And who was Chhaterica beyond the tragic end that has come to define her story? This is not just a story about a death. It's about a life cut short, about the questions that remain unanswered, and about a truth that may have stayed hidden far too long. Have you ever sensed that someone you cared about was in trouble, but didn't know what to do? Let us know in the comments. This is Chhaterica Smith's story, and it deserves to be told. Chhaterica Smith was not just a name in Alexandria, Louisiana. She was a part of the fabric of the community, known for her unwavering kindness, her infectious smile, and her ability to light up any room she entered. It wasn't just the people close to her who felt the impact of her presence. It was everyone, whether you were a neighbor, a coworker, or even someone she passed on the street. Chhaterica had a way of making you feel seen, heard, and valued. Born and raised in Alexandria, she grew up surrounded by the warmth of a tight-knit community. From an early age, Chhaterica showed a natural aptitude for connecting with others. She had an easy charm and a way of making people feel comfortable around her. Friends remember her as someone who was always there when they needed her, offering a listening ear or a shoulder to lean on. Her laughter was contagious, and her energy almost boundless. Professionally, Chhaterica was a dedicated worker. She poured herself into her job, constantly striving to make a difference, whether she was working directly with people or contributing to something larger in the community. Colleagues would describe her as hardworking, someone who brought not just skill, but a kind-hearted spirit to her work. She wasn't just an employee. She was someone who brought out the best in others. Outside of her career, Chhaterica had hobbies that reflected her creativity and her zest for life. She was an avid reader, someone who could always be found with a book in her hand during her spare time. She also had a passion for music, often humming melodies or attending local events where she could listen and connect with the art. Her love for the simple joys in life was evident to anyone who knew her, but it was her friendships that truly defined Chhaterica's essence. Those who were closest to her speak of the bond they shared, one that went beyond just being there for each other during good times. Chhaterica was the friend who showed up no matter what. She was the one who would drop everything to offer help, to provide support when the world seemed too heavy. Her friends felt as though they were never alone when she was around, and her absence now leaves a void that will never be filled. After her passing, tributes poured in from all corners of her life. Her obituary painted a picture of a woman who had left a lasting impact on everyone she encountered. Family members spoke of the love she gave unconditionally, and how her loss felt like an irreplaceable wound. Even the local community felt the void. Chhaterica was more than just a neighbor. She was the heart of the neighborhood. Her contributions may have seemed small to some, but to those who knew her, they were everything. The tributes were more than just words. They were heartfelt remembrances of a woman who had made the world a brighter place. But behind all of this love, there was a hidden story, a story that only a few knew about, and which few could have predicted would end in such a tragic way. The community's grief was palpable, and the loss was felt far beyond just the immediate family. The question on everyone's mind was the same. How could someone so full of life have been taken so suddenly? And why did this have to happen to someone who was loved by so many? And still, as people continued to mourn, a darker reality was just beginning to unravel. Chhaterica's life, like so many, was intertwined with love, challenges, and the pursuit of happiness. Her marriage to Tracy Johnson, whom she met several years earlier, seemed at first like a fairy tale. To outsiders, they appeared the perfect couple. Tracy, a man with a quiet demeanor, was often seen by Chhaterica's side at social events, always supportive, always present. Their marriage on the surface appeared stable and loving, with Chhaterica's friends noting how the two seemed inseparable. But as time passed, cracks began to form, subtle at first, barely noticeable to the outside world. There were whispers among those who knew the couple well, murmurs about Tracy's temper and about tension that was hard to ignore. Small incidents seemed to be brushed under the rug, the kind that one might write off as minor misunderstandings. Yet for those close to Chhaterica, these were signs of something deeper, something darker. Publicly, the couple put up a front. On social media, they posted pictures of their vacations, their celebrations, their good times. But behind the smiles, things weren't always as perfect as they seemed. Those who had known them closely reported seeing a shift in Tracy's behavior, mood swings, an increasing sense of distance, and moments of anger that would flare up without warning. Chhaterica herself had shared with a few friends that things weren't as easy as they looked. Still, she didn't speak openly about her struggles, holding on to the hope that things might improve. Then, as the relationship wore on, the tension became impossible to ignore. Chhaterica, a woman who had once been filled with such joy and light, began to show signs of exhaustion. Her bright spirit seemed dimmed, and friends noticed a change in her demeanor. The last few months of her life were marked by a sense of quiet unease, a feeling that something was wrong, but couldn't be fully understood or explained. Public speculation started to surface, as people who once admired their relationship began to question it. Was this perfect marriage really what it appeared to be? Or was it hiding the truth of a toxic environment? Some who followed Chhaterica's social media began to speculate about what was going on behind closed doors. The perfect photos, the happy captions, seemed increasingly out of place in light of the rumors swirling among friends and family. The truth, however, would remain locked away, known only to those within the confines of their home. And as the situation escalated, it became clear that the signs of strain had reached a breaking point, one that would lead to a tragedy no one could have ever foreseen. March 30th, 2025, began like any other day in Alexandria. But for Chhaterica Smith, it would be the final day of her life. The events of that afternoon would unfold in a manner no one could have predicted, changing everything in the blink of an eye. At around 2:45 p.m., a 911 call was placed from the couple's home. The caller, frantic and shaky, reported a disturbance. Officers with the Alexandria Police Department were dispatched immediately. As they approached the home, the air was thick with tension. They had no way of knowing what awaited them inside. Upon entering the residence, the scene was eerily calm. The officers found Chhaterica's lifeless body in a bedroom, a gunshot wound marking the tragedy that had just occurred. Tracy Johnson's body was found shortly after, his death the result of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The scene was quiet, the kind of silence that spoke volumes to the officers, one that carried the weight of shock and disbelief. The Alexandria Police Department quickly issued an official statement confirming that the case was being treated as a murder-suicide. The cause of death for Chhaterica was ruled a homicide, with Tracy's death confirmed as a suicide. The police reported that there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that this tragic event had unfolded behind closed doors, within the confines of what should have been a safe home. Neighbors, who had once seen the couple walk by with smiles and hand in hand, were left in stunned silence. They hadn't known the extent of the tension that had been building in the marriage. Their reaction was one of shock, disbelief, and for many, guilt. Could they have seen the signs? Could they have done something to prevent this? For the officers who arrived at the scene, the body language said it all. They were trained to handle tragedies, but the horror of what they had just discovered weighed heavily on them. It was a reminder of the hidden darkness that can sometimes exist behind closed doors, something no one could have prepared for. The case was far from over. Investigators would continue to search for answers, but one thing was clear. Chhaterica's life had been violently and senselessly taken, and her story was now part of the growing tragedy of domestic violence in the country. The investigation into Chhaterica's death quickly pointed to a grim reality. This wasn't just a tragic incident. It was a murder-suicide. Law enforcement's immediate classification of the case was based on the overwhelming evidence found at the scene. Chhaterica's death was ruled a homicide, with Tracy's death confirmed as a suicide. The weapon was found next to Tracy, leaving little doubt about the sequence of events. The forensic team worked meticulously to process the crime scene. Evidence was collected and photographs were taken, each detail painstakingly preserved to piece together the final moments of that fateful day. As the forensic timeline unfolded, it became clear that the couple's home had been the setting for an intense, violent confrontation. In the days that followed, investigators turned to the couple's digital footprints, any communication that could shed light on the events leading up to the tragedy. Text messages, social media posts, and phone records were all examined. Were there any signs of distress in the hours before the incident? Any threats, warnings, or unsettling conversations? The digital trail was sparse, but some texts between Chhaterica and close friends hinted at growing unease, though nothing directly indicated the violence that was about to unfold. It seemed that despite the tension, the end came with a brutal, unanticipated finality. As the investigation progressed, the mystery surrounding the couple's private life became clearer, but the reasons behind Tracy's actions remained hauntingly elusive. Were there warning signs missed? Could anyone have intervened before that tragic moment? In the wake of Chhaterica's tragic death, the community of Alexandria was left in mourning. Funeral arrangements were quickly made by Miller and Hill, the funeral directors, with friends and family gathering to say their final goodbyes. The sorrow was palpable as loved ones remembered Chhaterica as a woman full of life, kindness, and love. Social media became a place for tributes, with hundreds sharing memories, messages of grief, and calls for justice. The National Gun Violence Memorial added Chhaterica's name, allowing people from across the country to light virtual candles in her memory, a silent yet powerful acknowledgement of her life cut too short. As the tributes poured in, those closest to Chhaterica took to social media to express their pain. Family members shared heartfelt posts, recounting the joy Chhaterica had brought into their lives, while friends spoke of the deep void left behind. The emotional toll was felt far beyond the family home, reverberating through the tight-knit community. The grieving process was long, with many struggling to understand how a life filled with such potential could be extinguished so suddenly. Chhaterica's death, a stark reminder of the quiet horrors of domestic violence, left a lasting impact on those who loved her and on the community that had once celebrated her vibrant spirit. In the days following Chhaterica's death, a troubling question lingered. What went unseen? Were there signs leading up to the tragedy that could have been detected? Or was it simply too late? Conversations among close friends and online discussions began to surface, suggesting there were underlying issues in the marriage. Rumors hinted at tension, but nothing concrete ever seemed to point to the catastrophic end that would follow. Some said they had noticed Chhaterica pulling away from her usual social circles, her smiles perhaps masking something darker. Others claimed they had heard vague complaints from her in passing, but no one acted on them. Was it fear, or simply the belief that things would get better with time? The tragedy raised unsettling questions about intervention. Could those closest to her have done more? Was there a missed opportunity to recognize the red flags that seemed so obvious in hindsight? It's a painful reality for many who find themselves asking, what if? What would you have done if you suspected your friend was in danger at home? Would you have spoken up? Or would you have let things be? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. As we reflect on Chhaterica's life and the tragic events that unfolded, one thing is certain. Her story must not be forgotten. Her bright spirit, her kindness, and the love she brought to those around her should stand as a powerful reminder of the need to recognize and address domestic violence before it's too late. We encourage you to light a virtual candle for Chhaterica, to share her story, and to help raise awareness so that others may not face the same fate. Her memory lives on through the voices that speak her name, and together, We can ensure her death serves as a catalyst for change. What are your thoughts on this heartbreaking story? Let's honor Chhaterica by keeping this conversation alive. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the truth behind the headlines, be sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching.